Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lucy and in today's video I'm recommending some historical fiction books for autumn and winter. So historical fiction, one of my all-time favourite genres. I've made many a video on historical fiction on my channel. I will leave them linked down below. And there's something really lovely about this season. I feel like we're really straddling autumn and winter right now, and there is something about reading historical fiction in the autumn and the winter that just makes it so much more cozy, atmospheric, and I feel like this genre just fits really nicely with this season. So I thought I'd recommend some historical fiction books that I've maybe not talked about as much on my channel that I do think are perfect reads for autumn and winter. So grab yourself a warm drink and get cozy and prepare for a lot of historical fiction recommendations to accompany you this season. So let's just get started, shall we? I feel like my first recommendation, I have featured this in other historical fiction recommendations on my channel before, but it is the perfect book for autumn and winter, especially around Christmas. It is so cozy to me. It is a comfort read, and that book is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Now this gorgeous edition, hopefully you can see that okay, is one of the V&A Penguin Classics editions. I don't know if you can still get these. I'll try and link it down below if I can find them. They are honestly stunning. Like, look how gorgeous this is. Beautiful. So why is Little Women a great read for this time of year? It is such a cozy read. It follows four sisters, the March sisters, so that's Jo, Amy, Meg and Beth. And this is set during the time of the American Civil Wars, I believe. And there is something very, very cozy about this because obviously their father has gone off to fight in the war, so it's just them and their mother. This is about their kind of adolescence, their childhood, and how they grow into young adults and then adults. It follows this really close bond that each of the sisters have, their close relationship with their mother, and also their relationship to a boy who comes onto the scene called Laurie. And Jo's relationship with Laurie especially is heavily featured in Little Women. There is something very classic and very cozy about this novel. There is Christmassy scenes, there's autumnal scenes. It feels like a novel that just is perfect to read at Christmas because of that, but also there's the family bonds there that just make it so adorable and lovely to read and very wholesome. Now I'd recommend pairing this with the Greta Gerwig film that came out featuring Emma Watson, featuring Timothée Chalamet, Obsessed, Florence Pugh, so many great actors. And I really think that film did an incredible job of bringing this to life and bringing the magic there. The novel is set in 1860s Massachusetts, and it actually follows Louisa May Alcott's own childhood. It's inspired by that. So this, as a historical fiction novel, a classic to read during this time of year, I can't think of anything better. So if you're looking for a very wholesome read, start with this one to give you all the cozy vibes of the season. Now, the next novel I really want to recommend is one of my all-time favourite classics, and honestly, just an incredible book, like one of my all-time favourites. This is North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. Now, this follows Margaret Hale, who moves from the beautiful countryside of southern England up to an industrial town in the north. So when her father decides to stop being a man of the church, they have to basically uproot their entire lives and they move to somewhere more affordable. And that is a place called Milton, which we presume is in northwest England. It's basically drawn on like inspirations of, you know, towns like Manchester that were really booming in the Industrial Revolution. And, you know, this focuses on a cotton mill. So Margaret basically butts heads with a man called Mr. Thornton, who is a local mill owner. He's a very successful businessman, but his harsh treatment of the people who work for his mill really put her off him, and they just butt heads. They basically can't agree that this kind of northern hardness that Mr. Thornton has compared to Margaret's like more southern, softer sensibilities just clash the entire way through the novel. So this is of course a romance. There is a romance at the heart of this, I guess. And also it really looks at the hard life of the poor in the industrial north at the time. So it really is kind of like those divides between north and south, and you know, the more working class and the middle classes is a key theme of this novel. So why do I think it's a perfect novel to read in autumn winter? Just as soon as you get to the north in this book, The settings are a lot darker, it's a lot more brutal. You really see the struggles of the working classes, the poor, and something about that is like perfect to read when you're wrapped in a blanket, a candle-lit night. What can I say? Really, really perfect for that. And also the romance, the kind of antagonistic romance at the beginning that then blooms into more of an understanding. If you like Pride and Prejudice, I feel like this is like an autumn-winter version set in the Victorian era of Pride and Prejudice. It is so perfect. It is a great enemies to lovers story. And honestly, I'd recommend reading this and then watching the TV series, the BBC adaptation with Richard Armitage in it. Perfection. I'm actually rewatching that at the moment and it is all sorts of cozy, and you know, this really goes through all the seasons as well. You kind of see the brutal realities of winter, you know, on this very poor industrial town, and the realities of life in Victorian England as well. So huge recommendation for this novel. I love it. So good. So the next book I really want to recommend to you guys is The Taxidermist Daughter by Kate Moss. This is a historical novel set in 1912 in Sussex, and follows Constantia, who lives in this crumbling old house in this very harsh part of the country. There are like marshes everywhere, and her house where she lives with her father used to be a very famous taxidermy museum. Now that's since gone out of business and she lives in a house full of taxidermy. So already kind of a gothic novel vibes, like there is kind of a darker streak to this novel. Now what's really, really great about this novel is it centers around a mystery, and a woman lies dead and they have to basically solve who killed this woman. Now it's worth saying this is set in the summer, but I think reading it in this time of year would actually be better because it is a gothic novel. It is actually very moody, dark. It's set during a season when the tides are rising quite rapidly, and the environment, the nature of this place where they live in Sussex, you know, is a threat to them as well. So they're living quite an inhospitable place where superstition is on the high. You know, they believe that you can see ghosts in this part of the world, and there is something about this kind of key mystery. It turns everyone's opinion to Constantia, and they start to suspect that maybe she is part of this murder. There is also kind of a parallel mystery about the house itself and her father and the secrets that dwell within her own home. So I would really recommend this for kind of like a dark autumnal read. It is set during the summer, but I think all the themes are very dark, cozy, gothic, and I really would recommend this book. If you like your historical fiction set a bit later, if you like gothic novels, I think you'll really enjoy this one. Okay, so my next recommendation is a really fun one. I read this quite a long time ago, but I absolutely adored it. This is TheDivers by Libba Bray, and this is set in 1920s New York. So we're in the flapper era, and the vibes are immaculate. I think it's so perfect for this time of year. It is also a murder mystery. So this follows Evie, who has a supernatural gift that hasn't really, you know, done well for her so far. Like, she's gotten into a lot of trouble because of it. And when she is shipped off to live with her Uncle Will, who I guess is kind of like a paranormal investigator, she is kind of delighted by this because she's swept into this world of excitement and energy. So when the police find a girl murdered with cryptic symbols all over her body, her Uncle Will must go and investigate, and Evie comes with him. And that's when Evie discovers that her gift could help to capture this serial killer. She ends up meeting this kind of band of friends who can help her out in the situation. But deep within this story, there is something very, very dark brewing. And this novel doesn't shine away from the darker elements either. There are some quite darker scenes in this. It's very spooky, very mystical, focuses on the occult and the supernatural. If you like your historical fiction with a touch of magic, I think this will be perfect for you. The 1920s setting mixed with kind of like the supernatural and the occult is such a great vibe, and on top of that it's a supernatural murder mystery, so that's super fun as well. If you want a historical fiction novel that's super atmospheric and also really, really fun and just evokes the time period, you know, the kind of glitz and glamour of the 1920s, then this novel will be perfect for you. It is a series. I think there is a second and maybe a third novel as well. I haven't read those two books, but hopefully I'll get to them at some point So do let me know if you've read The Diviners, what you thought about it. I really would recommend if you're after historical fiction with a murder mystery and some good old-fashioned supernatural stuff going on as well. So the next novel I really want to recommend is the gorgeous and one of my all-time favourite historical fiction novels, The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton. So this is set in the 1600s in Amsterdam and follows Nella, who on an autumn day in 1686 knocks on the door of an illustrious merchant called Johann Brandt. Now, instead of meeting her husband there, Johann, she meets his sister Marin. And Marin is very stern-faced and quite cold to her. And, you know, Nella does not fit in well in this household. A few days later, her husband does show up and he gifts her with a wedding present. And that is a miniature dollhouse, kind of a replica of their beautiful home that they live in. Now Nella starts to notice that this dollhouse, this miniature house, is not all that it seems. It seems to have like a very strange kind of mirroring of the house that they live in. And very suspicious things happen to this doll's house where it changes, it adapts, it kind of mirrors exactly what's happening in their own home. Now, she makes it her mission to track down the miniaturist who created this gift and solve the mystery of like how this is happening. Now, alongside of this, there are a lot of secrets in her relationship with her husband, with her sister-in-law, Marin, and what's going on with her. It's a house full of secrets, and if you like your historical fiction that is still quite gritty, I really like how this is set in 1600s in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam. It's a very unique setting. Like, I've not really read a lot of books set in that time period in Amsterdam, so it's a really gorgeous, like, kind of merchant city that, you know, we really see the kind of backgrounds of like how, you know, Johann, you know, builds his trade and makes the income. So the historical elements are really cool in this, but as are the more speculative elements with this mysterious miniature house that seems to have a life of its own and mirrors everything that's going on within the real home. So I really would recommend this if you haven't read this yet. I think it's one of those essential books, those essential historical fiction books that you have to read. This does start out being set in the autumn, so I do think it's a perfect read for this time of year as well. It's kind of not spooky. It's got a level of like unsettling energy about it, but it's perfect, and I really adored this book. Now, the next book is a book that probably a lot of you won't have heard of or read, and this is The Silver Witch by Paula Braxton. So this one I read a while back. I think I read it on NetGalley. I got kind of an e-arc for this book, and it really surprised me by how great it was. So this is a time-slippy dual narrative book where we start off in the present day, and it follows Tilda, who has moved to a very secluded Welsh cottage because her husband has died and she just needs a bit of space. She is a ceramic artist, so, you know, she really is trying to get back to her craft and, you know, find some peace, I guess, after her husband's sad death. But instead of finding this peace and quiet, it seems that this very tranquil place that she's moved to in the middle of nowhere in the Welsh countryside kind of sparks this power within her where, you know, animals seem to be drawn to her. She kind of tricks the electricity, like all sorts of things are happening that she can't explain. Now, only then does she have a vision of this Celtic woman, you know, going across this lake. And then we pick up the point of view of Seren, who is living in kind of Celtic times. She is exiled from society. She's kind of a shaman, a witch, and she has visions as well. And the story of Seren and Tilda's lives are kind of paralleled, and we go back and forth and we kind of see how close that their lives really were in terms of the things that have happened to them. This novel is full of prophecies, magic, obviously this kind of parallel life situation, and the book really goes back and forth between Tilda's modern point of view and Seren's point of view in the past. Now, I really loved how magical this novel was. It's set in this gorgeous landscape, and for that reason I think it would be perfect for autumn winter. There's also the historical element, like going back in the past with Seren and her story, and, you know, this fated prophecy that ties her life together with Tilda's. And also the Welsh landscape as well. It's like a key part of this book where it's just very rugged, very cozy. So I really would recommend this book if you're after more of a dual narrative, you know, set between the modern day and a historical time period. I think this book would be perfect for you. So do give it a go if you've not yet heard of this book. So do let me know if you give this one a try. Now, it would not be on if I got through this video without mentioning my beloved genre, Regency Romance. Because let's be real, I read a lot of Regency Romance, and my favourite author in this genre is Lisa Kleypas. Now, the first series I ever read from Lisa Kleypas was the Wallflower series, and the two novels I am going to be recommending in this section of the video are both from that series. Now, this series is linked together in terms of each book follows a member of a friendship group and really shows how they meet their love. And of course, these are romances, so each of them have a happily ever after. But I would say they are complete stories within themselves. And even though other characters do pop up in the novels, you don't really need to know who everyone is. So if you just want a autumnal romance and a wintry romance, then I have got the books for you. Now, book 2 of the Wallflower series is a book called It Happened One Autumn, and this is just such a good novel. I really would recommend. So It Happened One Autumn follows Lillian, who is an American heiress, and let's just say this is obviously set in English society in the Regency era. And we also follow Marcus Westcliff, who is like the catch of the season, born and bred British aristocracy. And he finds Lillian really bullish, really like, you know, just defying all the laws of society, says what she thinks, doesn't kind of give a damn. Like, obviously Marcus is very kind of wealthy and upper class, but also very blue-blooded, very aristocratic, and there are rules in society at this time. And there's something about her that just rubs him the wrong way. But he also just can't refuse this attraction towards her. So this is a really fun enemies to lovers. Like, they both really dislike each other. They both think they're both arrogant and stuck up, and you know, there's no way that they could ever fall for each other. But then there is this undenying attraction, and this book is set in autumn. It is a really kind of gorgeous, like cozy, romantic read. And Lillian and Marcus are, honestly, it's one of my favourite Lisa Kleypas books ever. And I would say that can only be topped by the next book in the series, which is Devil in Winter. Now this features my favourite love interest in the whole of the Wallflower series. This follows a notorious rake called Sebastian St. Vincent, I think his name is, and the kind of really shy Evie, who Evie is basically one of the friendship group that this series follows, and she's very, very shy, she's very timid. She's kind of, you know, like very innocent and basically the epitome of a wallflower. Now, determined to kind of escape her meddling relatives, Evie is determined to, you know, get married, to find someone who will marry her. And she approaches London's most notorious rake, Sebastian, to marry her and, you know, enter into a relationship with her. Of course, they have a marriage of convenience, there's no feelings involved, and Evie is all too aware of Sebastian's reputation, so she makes a deal with him, saying that if he can remain celibate for 3 months, she will let him into her bed. Now, of course, you know, this is like the perfect product for romance, right? Marriage of convenience and a bargain. And Sebastian's just one of those characters that is just so lovable, but also very like cheeky and very kind of roguish, and paired with Evie, who is a lot quieter and timid on the surface, is just the perfect pairing. This is set during winter, as the name suggests. It is just perfect reading for Christmas. Like, please do just read this book. It is absolutely incredible. And there is kind of like a level of threat underneath this novel where Sebastian ends up obviously developing feelings for her. He's got to protect Evie from someone from her past. And that's always what I love about Lisa Kleypas novels is, yes, they're a romance, but there's always like a side plot that becomes very, very serious towards the end. And they're never just a straight romance. There's always like something that's a bit more higher stakes. And I absolutely adore Lisa Kleypas's books. If you want more recommendations, I can give you a breakdown. I will also link my Regency Romance recommendations video down below as well. It's got all that goodness in, so I really would recommend these two books. They are autumn and winter specific if you're looking for some Regency romance this season. So guys, those are all my recommendations for historical fiction books for autumn and winter. I really hope you've enjoyed this video and you've gotten some recommendations. Do let me know which books you would like to recommend down in the comments below. Let's just make this a safe space of recommendations. I cannot wait to hear your thoughts. And thank you so much for watching again. I will see you very, very soon in my next video. Bye.